Mr. Transformers 96 here with another video. I'm going to be talking about my top 5 dream figures for the Transformers Studio Series series of figures. So this is the new series from Hasbro where they're kind of going back to the old films, basically just Transformers 1 through 4, and just redoing some of the figures that they've already done and doing figures that they never made of characters from those movies. So this is quite an exciting series. It's a series that I certainly have always wanted because, of course, there have been many figures that have come out that are subpar, and there have been many characters that are really great and needed of figures that never got figures. So this is a great series that kind of goes back and kind of fixes the mistakes. Some of the figures in the series are just okay, some of them are excellent. It's very divided in the quality of figures because some are just fantastic and some are just eh. However, they really nail scale for the most part. Other than Blackout, the scaling of this line is really solid. So that's one thing that makes it a very fun series. But in general, I very much am enjoying this series. I have a ton of the figures. I have most of them. To be honest, the new deluxes, Jazz and Lockdown, I plan to get, but I don't have them at the moment. I have all of the Voyagers, all the Leaders, and then I have Crowbar from the first series of deluxes. The other 3 deluxes I don't have, but I do plan to get Stinger. So basically, Bumblebee and Ratchet are the only ones that I don't plan to pick up. So I definitely plan to be somewhat of a completist when it comes to this series for the most part. And that's really just because they're making solid figures and they're making solid characters. So that's kind of, it's on Hasbro as to why I'm purchasing so much. So good for them. But going over the top 5 figures that I would love to see, before I start, I will just say that I am a big Decepticons fan, and in general, I feel like Decepticons get the low end of the stick when it comes to toys, just because Autobots are the main characters. So of course they get more figures, and they get a higher rate of figures, which means most of them have had updates to some degree, and therefore they're good already. So there's just not a whole lot of Autobots that I'd love to see or that I think are desperately needing in the series. However, Decepticons, there's a ton, so I definitely want to start off with Decepticons. So starting off with my number 5 pick, I'm going to have to go with Hatchet. This was one that I wasn't quite sure if I want to put in because Hatchet himself, I'm not like a huge fan of. I'm not insanely loving the design of the character. He's cool looking and everything, but he's just not like my favorite Decepticon or anything. However, I love the Dreads in general, and now that, of course, they made Crowbar when the first movie came out, but for the last night they redid Crowbar, or not Crowbar, they redid Crankcase, essentially, and now with the new series they finally made Crowbar, because we never had a Crowbar. So now it would be amazing if they would make Hatchet just to complete the team. Both the new crankcase, which is under the name Berserker, doesn't have the best paint. I mean, the paint looks fine, but it's not super movie accurate. Same thing with Crowbar, they went with the same color scheme. However, I did repaint crankcase, and I plan on repainting Crowbar, so I would love another Hatchet and repaint them so that they look really movie accurate, and just to have a nice solid team of the Dreads from Dark of the Moon. That would be excellent. So he's the only figure on this list that hasn't ever had a different or a previous figure of himself. There was a Cyberverse Commander figure, but there wasn't like an actual toy. That's in like the small little toy line that is, it's not very accurate at all. So now number 4, I'd have to go with Devastator. This is definitely one that's a stretch. I don't think they'd ever make him, to be honest. However, I certainly would love to get one. The Supreme Devastator is a fun figure. I really do like it. It's just so bulky and everything, but it's certainly leaving a lot to be desired. I think that there's totally a ton of updates that they could do, especially when it comes to the hands. I think that they really didn't nail the hands when it comes to the Supreme figure, and then I just think that they could really redo the figure and make it quite nice. Even charge like $150 for it, and they could do it the same way where the individual limbs just transform into the vehicles. They don't necessarily have to transform into the actual robots as well, but that would be really nice just to get a really good solid Devastator. Maybe make them slightly bigger, just more articulation, just more movie accurate, things like that. That would be really nice, and they can leave the whole light gimmick out of it and sound effects, leave that out, just so that we get a really nice representation of Devastator. That would be very cool. Of course, I'm not holding my breath for that one, but I certainly would enjoy it quite a bit. Number 3, I'd have to go with Soundwave, and I'd make this a deluxe figure. Soundwave should be deluxe. He really shouldn't be like a Voyager, I don't think. But unfortunately, it's just the reason I want him is that the original version isn't very good. When you're looking at just the deluxe one, it has very skinny proportions. It has kind of a big backpack that hangs down way too far, and then it has a lot of coloring that isn't accurate. A lot of just blue on him, which, you know, there's some blue highlights, especially in the circles, but he shouldn't just have like blue limbs or anything, so that just looks really odd. And just in general, it's not a really great representation of how he looked in the film. What is it, the Human Alliance version. Now that one was slightly better, but it's really good, to be honest, except for the legs. The legs are way too skinny and small. And then of course the paint isn't great as well, but his torso and his arms are really good. However, he's quite out of scale because he's Human Alliance, and that's like slightly over a Voyager scale. And he really should just be like a deluxe, maybe a bigger deluxe, but just a deluxe. So this is definitely a figure that I think needs an update. And of course, it's quite a classic character, being Soundwave is quite a fan favorite. They could even do him as a Voyager and then just make him like a kind of a small Voyager, but then include like Laserbeak and Ravage and you know, some of his pets. I think that would be a nice way of doing it too. Therefore, you kind of get some of the pets and have them be like actually really nice pets that maybe transform. You know, I think that would be a good way of making him a Voyager if they wanted to as well. Now, number 2 is Shockwave. Shockwave is one that I think that we desperately need. I really do, because the original Shockwave figure is alright, but it has many issues. First of all, the paint I don't think is very accurate. It uses a much more pinkish purple than it needs to be. It needs to be more of a bluish purple rather than reddish purple. And then, of course, my biggest issue with that figure is that it's just so flat. He's really flat, and Shockwave should be very rounded. He should be rather bulky in that manner, but the Voyager one that we have now is just so flat. It really is, and it's rather annoying. It's not even just flat in one area or anything. It's got flat arms, flat chest, and a flat leg. So it's a very odd item. I think that Shockwave is a big enough character that like he really needs an update. And figure wise, I think it definitely needs an update, because not only is the figure outdated and not great, but I think that the scale is off as well, and that's something that the Studio series really seems to be fixing, is the scale of the figures. So I'd love to see him in a leader class scale. I think that would be wonderful. I think this would be a huge, I think people would go nuts for this one, really. Out of all the figures on this list and out of all the figures that they could make, I think that a leader class Shockwave would really get people going crazy, because Shockwave is just a character that everybody seems to love. That's like, everybody loves him who's a movie, who enjoys the Transformer movies, I guess. So if you're a fan of the Transformers movies, chances are you'll love that Shockwave just because he looks cool, and he does get a decent amount of screen time too. So I think that Shockwave would do wonderful for them, and it's definitely something that is well needed. So I think this could be the best one for that series, and I definitely hope that they continue the series, because this would be an excellent new addition for the next series of leader figures, because so far they've only done 2, Blackout and Grimlock. Now, my number 1 Transformer, this is one that I would love to get. I think that I would almost enjoy the Shockwave figure more. However, I think it's a little bit more important to get this one, and it is Bonecrusher. I'd love to see a new Bonecrusher figure, because we haven't received any Bonecrusher figure since the first Transformers back in 2007. So that's how outdated the figure is. Not only, I mean, it's a fine figure, but it is really lacking it's old-fashioned basically in its design. It has arms that are very clunky and very just chunky, in the fact that it's just a lot of Transformer pieces on him. The legs are alright, and the head looks nice. The claw is even decent. However, I think the paint's also off, so I think that he's one that's a prime candidate for a redo. Not to mention, he's in the wrong scale. He should be at least a Voyager. I think that would be just wonderful, considering they've redone a lot of the figures from the first movie, a lot of the Decepticons in particular, being Blackout and Brawl. Barricade gets an update every now and then the movie 1 Megatron we haven't had an update for in a while, but that's the movie 1 version. However, in Starscream we just got another movie 1 Starscream, so it feels like they're going back and doing a lot of the movie 1 Decepticons. I think Bonecrusher is one that a lot of people enjoy, and it's one that needs an update considering it's lacking in its design, especially around the arms, and then it's in the wrong scale, and it could definitely use a new updated paint scheme. So overall, I'd love to see that. So there's my list. So there's number 1, a Voyager class Bonecrusher. Number 2 is a Leader class Shockwave. Number 3 is a Deluxe class Soundwave. Number 4 is a Supreme class Devastator. And number 5 is a Voyager class Hatchet. So Voyager, right? Like, I guess they could probably do Deluxe. That's interesting. You know, I don't know if they would do Deluxe or Voyager. I feel like he'd be like in between a Deluxe and a Voyager. So I guess either way it would be fine. But I mean, if they want the car to stay in scale, though, they'd have to make him Deluxe. But I'd be fine with the Deluxe. So he's kind of interesting when it comes to his size. It can kind of go either way. But yeah, so there's my picks. I would absolutely love to see any of those in the Transformers Studio Series line, and I am quite excited for the continuation of this line. At least I hope that it does continue, because at this point we've basically had all the ones that have come out. I mean, the Voyagers, the second wave of Voyagers are out. The second wave of Deluxes aren't quite out yet. At least Hasbro's website hasn't received them yet, so they should be coming out very soon. And then the Leaders, there's only been one wave and there's no more coming out. So I definitely think that if they are going to continue this line, we're going to start seeing some pretty soon, I would hope. And again, I just really hope they continue this line, because it's been quite excellent. Overall, the majority of the figures that I've received from them are really good. I really enjoy the Grimlock Megatron, Optimus Prime, and Crowbar. My only disappointments are Brawl isn't the best, and then Blackout is really nice, just in the wrong scale, basically. Well, he's not in the wrong scale, but he's too small for a leader. So those are my only complaints, but in general, I think that this line is just excellent, and I'm having a ton of fun collecting it, and I do hope it continues, and especially I hope it continues with those 5 figures that I've chosen. So let me know what you guys think of my picks for the continuation of the Studio Series line, and I'd love to hear your guys' dream figures for more of the Studio Series figures. And thanks so much for watching.